is this the beginning of the end?
So this is the time of grand change in which you all have chosen to participate, to incarnate, for all the water in the oceans cannot drown you unless you let it inside you. It had to take a virus for you to see you're all connected. You collaborate, you're better together than you are apart, and you're all the same. You are more than you think you are. And it's time to discover that more.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to talk with the Archangels and understand what in the world is going on with the world, then do we have the Soul Truth Show for you. Today I'll be speaking with Sheila Gillette, the best-selling author and channel of Theo, the 12 Archangels. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about these times of high transformation and what they mean for you. That plus we'll talk about the power of alignment, Abraham and Esther Hicks, choosing to incarnate, neurological upgrades, what on earth is home church, and what in the world 22 months and birthing an elephant has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Sheila. Are you ready to shine?
Yes, I am, Michael. It's great to be with you.
Oh, great to have you here in the mighty woohoo. So, before we dive right into things, and yes, I'm on the East Coast, and you were asking me about the floods that just took place. So before we dive right into things, with all the fires, the floods, the wars, the plagues, everything going on right now, Sheila, is this the beginning of the end?
No, we're just more aware of all these things. These things have been going on this planet. And yes, we have to pay attention to global warming, but it's awakening us to the things that we need to change and are changeable if we place an attention and intention with that being a priority.
I love that you say attention and intention. I have a book, The Automatic Writing Experience, where I speak to the angels as well. And that's one of the common things that they say is both of those things. So what you're really saying here is if we place attention and we see the fires, we see the floods, we can take a higher level perspective and understand they are part of, if I'm correct, a global or a human-wide shift taking place at this time.
Yes, this time is a tremendous time of consciousness shift. And Theo has been talking about this for several decades. And this is the time. In my first book, The Fifth Dimension, they were speaking about this time and that these changes would be coming in all areas of our lives, not just the natural earthly experiences, but everything. The change of consciousness is necessary to bring peace to our world eventually as we change within us.
Are we changing dimensionally?
We are now in the fifth dimension. And my first book, The Fifth Dimension Channels to a New Reality, that was something new to the publishers. And most people were saying, we're not even in the fourth dimension yet. And Theo was talking about the fifth dimension. But that's the consciousness shift we're living in. And the veils between our multidimensional selves are thinner now, so we have a greater awareness. And what I found in this dimensional shift is there have been waves of awakening spiritually, that people are having their own personal experience with spirit, with guidance, with connectivity, with their own psychic ability. And so they're already noticing these different changes in multidimensional expression in and through themselves. And so it's great that there are people like yourself, Michael, and myself that are here to be way showers and to talk about it. And because when it starts happening to you, many people don't understand and they become frightened. And I knew early on when this awakening happened to me in 1969 that I was to assist people to understand their own awakening.
So let's go back there briefly because I was gifted with two near death experiences myself. I didn't have anyone show up at the edge of the bed the way that you did. But would you mind sharing briefly both what the awakening experience was and then what started happening a couple weeks later?
Well, in 1969, after the birth of my youngest daughter, I was in intensive care because I had pulmonary embolus, which were my lungs were non-functional. I felt as if I had an elephant sitting on my chest, and I was in intensive care, and my family was being prepared for my imminent death. And I just kept laying there saying, "Hey, God, give me a job. I'll do anything. Please give me a job." I had two little children at home and a brand new baby, and I wanted to stick around. And so that was my mantra. And then the room got extremely bright, as if the sun had risen in the room itself. And I saw movement at the end of my bed. And Jesus was standing at the end of my bed. So you can imagine it was like, okay, what's happening here? And he didn't say anything to me auditorily as we hear ourselves speak to each other. I heard in my inner mind as he crossed his arms, "Remember, my child, you are loved." And then he smiled. And his smile was mesmerizing, but his eyes even more so. I was transfixed. And then at that point, I felt as if my crown had opened up and this warm, likened it to warm honey being poured in because this warmth just started seeping through every cell of my body. And as it did that, I just started relaxing into it. And at the moment it went through the trunk, I felt as if I could take a deep breath. And my lungs were full of fluid that in all ways it would have been an impossibility, but I really think I had a miraculous healing. And then I was in the hospital for a month. I came out of the hospital, and about 6 months later, I had all kinds of psychic phenomena happening to me internally and externally. I could hear messages as I heard Jesus's voice on my inner mind hearing. I would hear messages from spirit. I had physical phenomena happening when spirit wanted to talk to me. The chair on which I would be sitting would physically be shaking. I had my bed levitate in the middle of the night, and I could do automatic writing. I could concentrate my mind on something and move objects on tables. I of course, had the messages auditorily coming in clairaudience. And then I tranced spontaneously and became a direct voice trance medium. At that time, channeling wasn't even a word used in this genre. And I began that, and a spokesman named Orlos came through, very soft spoken, and said to me, "I am preparing you physically for higher teachers to come in." And they stayed with me for a couple of years, and then they announced, "I it's time for me to leave," Orlo said. "The higher teachers are here." And then Theo came in with this huge energy and loud, loud voice and instructed that they were 12 archangels and would be collectively known as Theo, and told me to look it up in the dictionary and that they would not identify singularly because the message was the important thing rather than the messenger. And they didn't want all of that confusion and more attention paid to the messenger.
Thank you. Couple more questions, and then we'll go into we'll have Theo come forward. I was careful. I almost said Theo. I lived in Europe for years. Theo is how I was reading it in your beautiful work. Um, Speaking for myself, integration, even when knowledge beyond thought comes through from something like an NDE, is to me challenging. at best. How were you able? This is the personal question that I've got to know. Because it's just been such a weird journey for me and for everybody else going down this path. How were you able to integrate that? And all of a sudden, you're hearing voices and now you're speaking a voice.
Well, you know what kept me going and really committed was that commitment I made in intensive care when I said, "Hey, God, give me a job." And I lived. I really did have a healing. And so when all of this strange stuff was happening to me, and it was off-putting, having your bed levitate, and spirit really wanted me to know that I wasn't creating this myself, because I had an analytical mind of, is this really me or something else? So they gave me proof. And when that was all happening, it just inside in the depth of our undoubted knowing, I knew it was okay, even as strange as it was. But I also knew, Michael, that I didn't have anybody as a mentor other than the angels sharing with me and directing me. That I wanted to be that person because, as they had told me, and I knew that if I was capable of doing this, we all are, and that we all have psychic ability or intuitive gifts. And so, over the years of doing this work, that's exactly what I've done, is assist in being there for people who are having their opening as well, to say, it's okay. Because what I did have is scientists that found out about me, and who knows how that happened. It, you know, the universe. Um, but I was tested for my psychic ability, and I was thrilled to do it, because what it gave me was like the good housekeeping seal of approval that you're not a crazy person, you're psychic. And so that, that gave me that, okay, and just kept putting one foot in front of the other. It's really been great in supporting people in the way I've been able to in doing this work.
Woohoo! Last question, I believe, and then we're gonna dive in here, and it's interesting because I guess I'll ask Theo about neural rewiring, because that sounds like a lot of what you got is neural rewiring and neural upgrades. Um, you have been a mentor for many others, and there's one that's very well known, and I wonder if you could share for a moment about Esther Hicks and Abraham.
Yes, I met Esther and her husband Jerry in 1984 in Phoenix, Arizona. I went there to work with clients, and they came to me as a client. And Theo had shared with Esther that she was going to become a channel and that she would be channeling. And so they inspired her and instructed her on meditation and different things. And so here we are today. And she's been very, very um, well known in the work that she's done with Abraham throughout the world. And I have to say that I am just so pleased for that, and like to know that I was a little bit part of that work getting out to the world.
Here's where you are a major part, because I know the work that I do, and I'm becoming familiar and already loving what I've heard and seen of your work, is you, through Theo, are a tuning fork or a tool of attunement. So you are, through Theo, able to help open people up as you do a transmission. Does that sound accurate?
I believe that is because Theo doesn't only speak to us. When people are inspired or drawn to work with Theo or to talk to Theo, they're working on them too energetically, opening them up, balancing them. And it's true in any of our mentoring programs. Theo told us years ago that we asked how did they connect, because we've done radio shows before we could do the internet shows. We had a radio show, and people would call in and Theo would talk to them. And Marcus asked, well, how can you do that? We had one lady that called about health issues. And the first thing Theo said, we see that you're visually impaired. But then they went on to talk about her back pain. She called our office the next day. We didn't know who she was. It was a first name basis and it was a radio, a call in. And she called our office the next day and she said, I don't know who you people are, other than, she was inspired by a friend to call the show that day. But she said, I'm the one that called about health issues. And Theo said, you're visually impaired. And she said, I'm blind. So then she wanted to come and meet with Theo privately. So Marcus said, how'd they know that? you know?
So cool.
So, yeah. So
And the
we
proof.
asked them exactly. People need something like that to trust. But Marcus asked, how'd you do that? And Theo said, we have a particular sound or tonal quality in our voice that is our soul note, that is unique to us only. Nobody else has it. And that's a bridge to them engaging soul to their soul.
Beautiful. So I'd like to call in Theo now. With that said, for everybody listening, we're all going to be bathing in this soul note, aren't we?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. So would you mind if I call in Theo at this time?
Oh, I'd be happy to and privileged. It'll take just a moment. Here we go. It is the beginning, is it not?
It is. Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Theo.
We are appreciative of the opportunity to serve you.
I have a list of questions for you, Theo, but I feel like I get to do this the way I do in automatic writing, which is to ask you first, what do we need to know today?
So this is the time of grand change in which you all have chosen to participate, to incarnate for. For this is a time of consciousness shift, never before experienced in the human experience, in the human species. And it is a time of grand expansion and the learning of the integration of releasing limiting beliefs, beliefs that have been held about you that are simply untrue, to recognize the magnificence of each and every soul.
I'm picturing, Theo, a big guy in a little suit. It feels very uncomfortable right now. Everything feels wrong. Is that by design?
In your description, it is uncomfortable, but nothing changes unless things are intolerable.
Does it have to be that way, or can we shift or ascend to a level where we can learn, not perhaps today, but without that discomfort?
So, discomfort or struggle, or however you describe it, is a choice, isn't it? It's not a necessity. But the discomfort comes in the unknowingness. But each and every one of you know if you would just listen. Listen on the inner, your higher power always supports you and directs you. So it's important in this shift of consciousness that all become aware of how to do that. For the old way has been to look outside the self for answers, but it's from the inside out.
Thank you, Theo. Does that mean we all must meditate or pause or simply make space? How do we begin that process in a world that is so many radio stations going at once?
So all of those things are true. Take a pause. Breathe. Breath is extremely important. Meditation, not only is it a way of getting in touch with self and guidance that is ever present about you, but it is a complete rest for the nervous system physiologically. So there are many attributes to that. But toning down the noise, as you put it, is very important. There was a great leader in your country of Eleanor Roosevelt that made a statement that is applicable here in that all the water in the oceans cannot drown you unless you let it inside you. That is true with all the oceans of noise. So how you keep it out is pay attention on the inner and ask critical questions of self when you hear from the outer something that puts you off course. Is this true? For each and every one of you has a truth barometer inside of you. It's visceral. When you hear the truth or you speak it, there's a visceral experience in your body. You have some kind of physical response. Each and every one of you do, and have had that experience. And so pay attention to that as well when you say, is this true? For that no doubted knowing kicks in that response.
Thank you, Theo. I'd like to dive in there a little bit more. And I want to take the news, what I call negative worthless stimulation. It is very easy. I consider it more addictive than heroin at this point, and a frequency lowerer. It does not help us to rise up. And I'm interested in what a consciousness shift means to you. But how do we, if we are caught up trying to determine the truth and it is overwhelming and bringing us down, how in the world do we find clarity?
Look for the good. For what is in the news, as you put it, is just sensationalism. And it's in those doing it are instructed to do that because it's entertainment and, yes, addictive. So it's to know that you have the ability to change the dial, change what you're placing your attention on. Yes, it's good to know what's happening in the world. Of course it is. But you do not have to dwell upon it. And no, each person chooses perfectly opportunities of their growth. It may be a cataclysmic event. It comes in many different forms to each and every one of you because life will always challenge you. That's the curriculum that you signed up for. But it's how you view it and experience and respond to it that can change.
Thank you. Let's dive into, if you don't mind, the curriculum. Why now? Why did we choose, and I'm guessing we chose to incarnate now, 2,000 years after Christ, for instance, at this particular juncture, which seems to me to be unique, shall we say?
It is that energy, that vibrational frequency. The Christos, if you want to speak of it in this way, is fully in place on the planet, the fifth dimensionary energy, which is a dramatic shift of consciousness and awareness in each and every one of you in the collective species. It's available to you if you so choose it. And that is why it seems at a critical mass or critical crises in every area on the planet, not just one. It had to take a virus for you to see you're all connected. And it doesn't. It doesn't discriminate between the color of the skin, the language that is spoken. Each human body is a host for it, or possibly such. And so coming together in this crisis, if you would, to support each other, as you would when you witness a cataclysmic event. The first inclination for, we would say, the majority of human beings is to assist each other, isn't it? For your collaborative species, not competitive in that sense. You collaborate, you're better together than you are apart, and you're all the same. We see no division in your world as you do, in the sense of invisible lines between you, in the sense of states or countries. We see the divisions of the hemispheres with water, but there's no divisions between you. And now, with your connectivity of the internet and technology, you are more connected than you've ever been.
Thank you. Does this mean that we're playing with opposites or polarity? For instance, every magnet has a negative and positive, no matter how many times we chop it up. And we have to experience, based on whatever collective agreement we have that we learn through suffering at this point, we are choosing to be more divisive, and more so and more so and more so, in order to awaken and come together at a higher level.
Yes, and when people think of polarities or opposites, they often think of good and bad as well, or right and wrong. So we have brought forth and speak much about the integrative process, soul integration of the fragmented aspects of the soul that hold beliefs of lesser than, of not being worthy. And when ones can shift and change those beliefs, then there's an alignment of self-love, not from a conceited standpoint or narcissism, but actual love of self that has been spoken about through many centuries by great teachers that have come forth. That message is still the same. That then you can give love to each other and treat each other appropriately and be those collaborative beings to increase and bring about world order that has never been before.
So if I'm hearing you right, it is pouring the warm honey that was poured on the chakra of Sheila, pouring that over ourselves and our own heart to heal our own individual heart, which then opens us up to be able to heal the heart of all of humanity.
Yes. So if you all are integrated, you'll have peace in your world, and you would not need to have laws and armies and all of those things, because you would be treating each other appropriately with respect and love.
Thank you. Do you see we're looking at COVID right now, time number 4, wave 4, wave 5. When people get this, maybe wave 6. Are things going to increase in challenges right now until there's some sort of a critical mass of awakening?
You're living it. The critical mass of awakening is now. And yes, there are these waves of virus, but if everybody, as has happened in the past, thought about another other than just themselves, and that you were all caring for your physical structures to be in care of your species, because that's what's required here.
That's where I'm not challenged. I'm extremely bullish. I believe, and I would love to hear if it's otherwise. I believe that we have collectively agreed to make it through. We could go off the cliff. I believe we've chosen otherwise. But I don't see the get up and go yet. Where do we see that?
So it's being played out, isn't it? Everything is personal choice. Even though when beings think they don't have it, that's a choice in itself, isn't it? Indecision is a decision in itself. Then life just happens to you and it will continue to happen to you. But when there is the discovery that life is happening through you and for you, that's when dramatic changes occur in one singular life and as in mass, as you spoke. If all had that consciousness, it would change the entire human experience, wouldn't it? It's like the thermostat in your home. You have the thermostat, you turn it up a few degrees or down a few degrees, it changes your environment, doesn't it? Well, when you change your minds and have a greater awareness of what we're speaking about, that's the thermostat of your life. And when you change it even a small amount, as you would a 1 degree change in your home, that small change can change the trajectory of your life forever.
Thank you. I teach a course. I have a school of mystics and school of mysticism, of looking at the world from a higher plane or a higher perspective, or as many guides have called it, from the upper room. And what I hear you saying is that if we can shift our vantage point, recall some of our self agency, take ourselves out of victimhood, and see that there is a bigger game at play, that alone shifts our energy just like the thermostat.
That's what we're speaking about. It's a shift of consciousness, isn't it? And it's changing your minds. It's changing the neural pathways in your brain from the old default system, the old ways of being that have been generationally passed along, societally passed along for thousands of years, from the fright, flight, freeze syndrome that they're out to get me syndrome, yes, to the more collaborative thinking and awareness that you are the creator of life itself, master creators. And that when you put your minds to it, the universal laws that are always working, the universal energies, align with that thinking. You have what you have because of the way you think. If that thinking changes, so does your life trajectory.
I just heard something special while you were saying that, Theo. I heard fight, flight, freeze syndrome, and I ended up with live, love, hug syndrome. When we shift to live, love, hug, and rewire, I'm guessing through practice, then the outcome necessarily changes.
Yes. And it sounds simple, doesn't it? And it is, the words are simple, are they not? But this has been an ingrained belief system, as we've stated, that has been passed along generationally and societally for thousands of years. And this is the consciousness shift we're speaking about. You spoke about 2,000 years past when the Master Jesus taught, and there have been other teachers teaching the love that you're speaking about. Now it is imperative that you all get it, that each and every one of you begin to change those neural pathways, that understanding of self love, and then the love of others.
Thank you. You hit a very interesting word, imperative. Why is it so important now?
Look at what's happening in your world. Become conscious. Don't be stuck in the past. This is now, and you are it in the changes for the environment, the changes, the continued experience of up leveling awareness and even intellect into having this beautiful world on what you live and inhabit, that utopia or Shangri-La or whatever word you want to use, that is possible to be for the human species and other species as well.
Thank you. How do we integrate and understand? I want to go to soul integration in a minute, but these changes are occurring to help us to awaken. But I look at, for instance, the fires going on and the millions of animals that are transitioning at this time. Now, I say that they came here with their own soul path and soul contract, and that's okay. Is that what's taking a place? Or how do we wrap our minds around with, in the process of our evolutionary growth, so many animals are challenged as well?
They are just other species on this planet, are they not? And you are correct. Having chosen to be here now. But understand, in many decades past, when we first started speaking about this time, we said that the areas that have been wet will become drier and the ones that have been dry will become wetter. And so that is happening as well. And that all the animals are very adaptable and have been over evolutionary time, if you would. Humans are no different. You have been adapting all along, and particularly now in this greater awakening that we're talking about, you're adapting to higher frequencies in your physical structures as well. Many have been fearful of these shifts energetically and vibrationally, but the body is miraculous in its ways of adaptation. And you're becoming much more refined in your receptivity.
Thank you. Have we been here as a human species before, ancient times? Are we really like version one of humanity? Or have we gone through this before, but not quite rounded the bend?
Yes, you have. Evolution is not only consciousness.
What is, when we say thank you, when we say that someone is an old soul or someone is a new soul, and for instance, old souls in theory have an easier time waking up now, what in the world are we talking about?
What you're talking about is new souls, old souls. It's just the choices of being human that one has chosen. It's possible that a younger soul, or what you spoke of as new soul, just hasn't chosen the earth plane as many times as an older soul would. And so an older soul has had many human lifetimes to develop an emotional awareness and a connectivity to those emotions and a consciousness of how to navigate the emotional body and compassion for others. For that is what emotions do. You learn emotionally through emotional experience and challenge, compassion. For others will have the same.
I believe everybody who listens to this is attracted to this. So we all have the same similar filter. So we're at a similar, I'm going to put level in quotes because I do not mean one person's at one level, one person's at another, but we're in the same plane, we'll call it, of spiritual growth. However, is this a more unique opportunity to leapfrog ahead, to gain great learnings without, let's say, the cosmic 2x4 that Sheila and I both had during this time?
Yes, of course. Yes. This is what this time is about. So you're noticing, as the trailer from which we speak has, this wave of understanding, awakening curiosity, desire in others, interest, if you would, in opening more to their spiritual side or their experience, however they may describe it, but to be more expanded consciously. And so that curiosity brings them to hear you speak, and she speak, or us through she. And so that curiosity is what we're speaking about, that has been prompted by the soul itself, by choosing to be here now, embodied.
Thank you. If we all, well, okay, let's ask it this way. Part A, is there a critical mass at which point a wave of change takes place in humanity? And B, does that mean we come into a different collective agreement or a higher plane where the challenges that we're facing now that seemed insurmountable go away or have a more energetic solution?
It doesn't, challenge doesn't go away because as we stated, that's curriculum of incarnation. The soul will draw into itself challenges for its expanded growth, but how you respond to them, how you view those challenges will have changed. The lenses from which you see yourself and the opportunity of growth that is drawn to you will have changed.
Thank you. So let's get to the crux of things. What is soul integration or coming into alignment?
It's a process which one becomes aware of where there had been a pause in one's life, or as we like to say, at an age when an event happens, that part of self is frozen in that moment of time emotionally. And there has been a belief that has been created or adopted because of that event. That belief diminishes one's knowing of self as to not lovable, not worthy. And so when one becomes familiar at the age that belief was created, not to relive the emotions deeply because you've already done that, but to be the witnesser, the awareness, the revelation of, this is where it began. And you can change the belief, not the event, that's history, that happened, but the lenses you see the event through and your experience of it, and the witnessing of the blessings and gifts that were achieved through that experience can change and rewrite that script. And one can love that part of self forward into the present, defrost them, if you would, and let them come into you fully with, because those are the ones that are the reactors emotionally to the stimulus or challenge of life.
It's the timing of what you're saying is uncanny. As I go immediately after this interview, Theo, I go down to my childhood home, which is being sold this year, and I get to clean out at age 51 my childhood bedroom. And there were significant wounds in my childhood. But what I'm hearing you say and taking note of and experiencing, it's sort of like the mystic Rumi who said the wound is where the light shines through. I would say, based on what you're saying, the wound becomes the healing.
Yes. And what you will notice as you are having that experience, you can talk to that younger version of yourself and love him, Let him know you love him, you appreciate him for his strengths that have made you the man you are today. And support him and ask him if he wants to come forward with you into your new life that is now birthing through you, and that you would like to have him come with you. And ask him if he'd like to do that. So it's important to include him in that decision. What you'll see is that he will be ready to most often.
How important, thank you, Theo, how important is it for all of us to remember the little Michael, the little Sheila, and to ask and include and love them and let them know everything's going to be all right?
Extremely important. That is the transformation that occurs. And what occurs in that, when they're included, you will find when challenged, because they're the ones that are reactive, most often saying to and putting the brakes on in moving forward, I can't do this alone. I need help. So the adult you can help him make the changes and make the move and clean out the bedroom. You could even ask him if he wants to keep anything.
Absolutely. How do we connect? Thank you, Theo. How do we connect more deeply with Spirit?
You're already connected. It's just an awareness that you are that is opening to you and making it welcome. Every one of you has connection, direct connection to Source and to the support that is ever present around you in the sense of some call spirit or guide or angels. It is all the same. And just waiting and ready to assist you upon your asking. In the asking, it is given.
Thank you. How do we, I was talking earlier about rising to the upper room, becoming a mystic, having a higher level perspective. Is there one thing that you haven't mentioned yet to help us tune that frequency dial to, we'll call it a higher note?
So that's what the integrative process will assist you in doing, because as we speak of this, what occurs is you become soul centered. Soul centered is a solid state of unconditional love that holds you steadfast no matter what is happening in your world. Think in the terms of the eye of the hurricane. The eye of the hurricane is very calm. But whatever is happening around it, all that chaos and wind and at times water and all of the things that are happening externally of it does not shake the center calm. So that's what you attain, is that center point, soul centeredness, that allows you to navigate your life more comfortably, embracing the challenge for what it is an opportunity of growth, not something to punish you.
Thank you, Theo. You mentioned early on, I believe it was question number 1, or when I asked what do we need to know today, you said we are everything is happening for us and through us, not to us. How do we recognize that in life's toughest situations? A losing of a child, a wiping out of one's home. How do we recognize it? And the home is not even close to comparative to the child, but how do we recognize it even then?
It's very difficult in those very high challenges. But what we would say, with every circumstance or challenge, there's always a gift. Look for the gifts and the blessings. In the beginning, it's difficult, but there is always that can be gained. And if one says what can be gained rather than what is lost, you will find the gain.
Thank you. Just a few more questions, one for everybody, then one or so for my wife and myself, if it's all right. How do we connect more deeply with you, with the archangels?
By asking, there's an omnipresence. And that is what we spoke to before. In the asking, it is given. But we are not here to usurp your free will. But when you ask for that assistance, no matter how large or small, we are there to assist you.
Thank you. On that note, then, I'm going to ask, is there anything that you would like to share today? Everybody listening and watching is following the journey of my wife and myself. For my wife, Jessica, and myself, anything that you'd like to speak to us?
So, on your journey, individually and collectively, you have chosen this path, soul connection. As you know, you're very soulfully aligned, and you give that ballast to each other as you navigate your own lives in support of the other as well. So, communication is the key for everything and everyone. To communicate your truth, it doesn't have to be harsh, but speaking who you are to another is the greatest gift you give them and give the world. And that is what you are doing. Continue that, and all is well.
Thank you. Would you mind, before we bring Sheila back, would you mind leading us in a short guided meditation?
We will do so. Closing the eyes, feeling the breath in the body. Breathe in deeply, filling the lungs completely. Exhaling audibly. Ah. Again, a deep breath and exhalation. Feeling the shoulders drop to the waist, releasing tension, allowing the breath to fill the cells, oxygenation of your body fully. I am a divine being, choosing now this life, choosing to live a life fulfilled, a life well lived. I am worthy. I deserve this life filled with love. I am love. Breathe in deeply, feeling the love filling the lungs, the cells of the body, the light. Exhaling complete resistance, release. I am. We are complete for this moment. God's love unto you. Good day.
Thank you, Theo.
Hi, Michael.
Woohoo! Welcome back, Sheila. What's it like during this time? I know I've got to let you go in a minute here for an airplane. What's it like during that time?
I just move over. I told somebody the other day, it's like sitting in a theater and there are all these chairs lined up, and it's like I just moved into the chair next to myself, and I am aware it's going on. It's not a total conscious recall of everything that's said, but if I would listen to the recording, it would be a memory of, "Oh, yeah, I know that." So it's in there somewhere, but it's not a total conscious recall of everything.
Gotcha. All right, real quick, few last things. First off, where can people go to find your work, to find your books, to have to find everything you've got going on?
Oh, to asktheo.com. That's our website, and you can just explore everything there. And we have some gifts for people who want to sign up to our email list. So we'd love to share Theo with you if you're so inclined.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. AskTheo.com. Where are you at on your spiritual journey, or what is blowing your mind most at the moment? Because I know you're on a rocket ship of an evolutionary path, so am I.
Well, I'm just thrilled with the programs we're producing now to share with people in the world. We've grown internationally. It's really interesting, Michael. Years ago, when I started doing this work, this is long before the internet, long before any of the technology, and Theo said, "This will be a global work." And I'm sitting in the mountains of Colorado with 3 little kids, and they're giving me this, and that I'd be writing books and stuff, and I'm going, "You talking to me?" You know? But I just trusted, because all the things that they were sharing with me as we went along was being affirmed and confirmed. So I just trusted, and here we are today, that we can share this information globally, and we can see each other like we're seeing each other today in different parts now of the United States, but I'm sure throughout the world. And that's such a gift to connect with each other as we can today. And so we're going to expand more of that.
Woohoo! What town are you in?
Today I'm in Anacortes, Washington, on an island by the San Juan Islands in the middle of Puget Sound, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And we're just heading to the airport to fly back to Arizona.
So last question. Any words of wisdom you want to share with people as you let them go and fly off into the skies?
What I'd say is, you are more than you think you are, and it's time to discover that more. And Michael, it's been such a gift being with you today. I've so enjoyed meeting you, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, Sheila. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, go over to Ask Theo, begin asking Theo yourself today, and above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! I think I got an energetic attunement. What a beautiful, special, uplifting, encouraging, surprising interview with Sheila Gillette and Theo. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. On that note, if you want to connect with the Archangels, if you want to learn how you can raise your vibration and ask any question of the angels and the Archangels you want, get the automatic writing experience. We have an entire video-based program, including live classes you can get at automaticwriting.com, where you can learn how to channel the angels. You can learn how to ask any question you want. You can learn how to get guidance, your internal GPS, from the other side of the veil. Simply come on over to automaticwriting.com. You can also get our book. It's now a #1 bestseller again on Amazon, and Angels and Spirit Guides. You can get our book on Amazon. You can get our book at your local bookseller. Bring the receipt back to automaticwriting.com as well to get lots and lots of bonuses and gifts. On that note, there's one bonus that's entirely free to you, which is to come join me every Sunday night for a YouTube live event with me. You'll be able to ask all of your questions as well. To do that, simply click the subscribe button or subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows. And we're a podcast too, so you can listen to Inspire Nation show while you drive, while you run, while you go for your walks, or whatever it is that you do. So you can go over to iTunes or wherever you get your favorite podcasts and simply subscribe to the Inspire Nation show. On that note, to check out more amazing interviews, be sure to click here. Big thumbs up if you like this. Leave your comments below. Love you guys so much. Shine bright. Woohoo! Love you guys.